This is the Realme Air 7 Pro and I'm going to review it today, but in doing so, I think the best way to do it is comparing it with this. This is the Oneplus Buds 4, which I covered just a week or two ago on this channel, but I'm going to be comparing them for reasons that are going to be very apparent in just a little bit. But also, that's 2 in 1. You get a review and a comparison in one video. How cool is that? Very cool is the answer to that question. Now, it doesn't look like it, but these are actually very similar. Not this one. This is the latest OnePlus Buds 4 generation, but the Gen 3 had a very similar cushion case design, and the similarities don't stop there. If you look at the Realme app as well, it's very, very similar to the Hey Melody app interface. So I feel like, and even some of the features are the same. So I feel like there's a lot of shared sort of knowledge going on between these two companies, and I think they have the same parent company, so that kind of makes sense. But before we get any further, at the end of this video, somewhere in the middle of this video, I will be giving away a wired IEM to one of my paying members. Thank you for your support. Shout out to all the members. But watch the video and find out what you've just won. If you haven't become a member yet, think about it. Okay, back to the video. Now, I think this green is a little bit chintzy. I think this emerald green is a little bit too cheap looking, and I think they should have gone for a nicer color. The earphones inside though, that's a nicer green. Realme, if you're watching, this is the green you should be going for if you want to be taken seriously in the future. However, I will say this, it's reasonably pocketable, it's very well built. This thing has no issues in terms of build quality and tolerances. This is nice. USB-C on the back for recharging, obviously, and the earphones themselves are very, very comfortable. Now, compared with the OnePlus Buds 4, the OnePlus is actually a little bit larger and it just goes into the ear a little bit better, so it fits more snugly. It's a deeper fit. This one is a shallower fit. Both of them very, very comfortable. I don't really have any issues, but the deeper fit does mean that it's just, in most situations, it felt a little bit more secure to my ears. Your mileage may vary. Also, because of the shallow fit, I haven't been able to measure the noise cancelling performance properly on this, but I've got notes on that. We'll get to that. Now, this works on touch controls and they are very responsive. You can swipe up and down for volume, you get double tap, and you get touch and hold, and all of that works really well. But what I like about it is that it's quite customizable. And one of the cool ways it's customizable is the AI translate feature, which you can bind directly to the touch and hold thing. Now, here's the thing. Comparing the two apps, they're largely similar, but there's a couple of features extra on the Realme. One of them is that AI Translate, which actually works pretty well and is very suited for traveling. So if you're traveling to India, for example, you can pre-select the Hindi language. It's the only Indian language I could find in the menu. And then basically when you're here in India, you just, sort of give this to one person if they'll have it, and you can speak in English and the other person will hear it in Hindi. It takes barely a couple of seconds to translate. So it's pretty quick as well. And I thought it worked pretty well in my testing. So I'm really impressed by it. The fact that can also be bound to just the touch and hold function means that the translate is good to go at a moment's notice, which I think is pretty cool. Now, apart from this, most of the features are very similar. You get a game mode for low latency. You get a mind flow mode on the Realme that you don't get on the OnePlus, that basically has like relaxing music or sounds in the background while you do other things. And you get that AI Translate feature, which is really, really nice. Apart from that, dual device connections, multi-point. You get LHDC, you get autoplay and pause, so it's got in-ear detection, which is nice. And that's it. The rest of it is all about the sound. So let's get right into it. From a noise cancelling and transparency point of view, these two are very, very similar. You're going to have much the same result in most situations, whether you've got the OnePlus or the Realme in your ear. However, if you're in a situation with a lot of noise across a wide frequency range, say you're taking a flight somewhere, right? In that situation, the OnePlus is noticeably better, because overall, the OnePlus is still better at noise cancelling in the lows and the upper mids, and in the highs, neither of them do a fantastic job. However, here's the thing. Because the Realme does a slightly less fantastic job in the upper mids and the highs, here's what happens. When you put these on in an aircraft or any kind of really noisy environment, the bass frequencies all get cancelled out pretty darn well. But because the high frequencies don't get cancelled out, your mind's attention is drawn to the high frequency thing that's going on around you, and that is actually more annoying. Even though it's doing pretty good deal of noise cancelling, it needs to be more even across the board. It needs to do a little more in the high frequencies to give you that feeling of noise cancelling in those scenarios. In a lot of regular scenarios, this will seem fine, but in most scenarios, the OnePlus will either feel just a little bit better, or in some cases, because it does a better job in the upper mid and even the high frequencies than the Realme, it'll just sound way better. On an aircraft, I would pick the OnePlus over the Realme. On the street, the OnePlus is going to be at least slightly better. So overall, the transparency on the OnePlus is still better. Realme is not bad, but it's just not as good. From a transparency mode, again, the OnePlus is better. In fact, the OnePlus is this iteration. The OnePlus Buds 4 has just refined itself so much across the board that honestly, you should go check the review of the OnePlus Buds 4 on this channel where I go into detail. I don't want to do that here, but it is very good. The Realme is, at the moment, lagging behind a little bit. But who knows, maybe the 8 will bring the change that we need on the Realme side of things. Right now though, I would pick for noise cancelling and transparency mode, I would pick the OnePlus over the Realme. Both of them fit comfortably. I didn't have a problem with wind noise in either one of them, so those are not really issues, although wind noise might be a little bit less on the Realme just because of the profile. That again is very, very subjective, and I'm not going to dwell into that. What I will dwell into is the sound. Okay, here's where things get a little complicated, because I'm going to put up frequency responses, and if you don't know how to read them, that's fine. But for those people who do know how to read them, I'm going to be referring to that and going to speak about it in a normal layman point of view as well, so that everybody can follow. Fundamentally, most Bluetooth earbuds, what they do is they boost the bass and the treble, and the Realme is no different. Why? Because it's a more impactful, fun sound that gives you the impression of more detail by adding treble rather than just actually being better tuned and therefore giving you more detail. And the Realme is quite guilty of that. I found the stock sound out of the box to be way too bassy and way too treble forward for my liking. But it does provide you with some EQ modes and custom EQ modes, so therein the journey begins. And it is a bit of a journey, because here's what happened. I went into EQ mode and I saw that there were 4 different presets: original sound, clear bass, and deep bass. You don't need deep bass, okay? There's a lot of bass. You don't need more bass. Clear bass is not actually clearing up the bass, it clears mids. They should call it clear mids, because what happens is the stock sound makes the mids are very clean, even out of the box, but they feel like the bass sort of impinges on the mids a little and bleeds into the mids a little. They just feel like that because of the sheer amount of bass. What the clear bass does is reduce the lower mid frequencies a little bit and therefore give you the impression that the mids are cleaner. The bass actually doesn't change very much and it doesn't sound any cleaner. So I think it's a misnamed profile. Honestly, neither of them wowed me. The original sound also didn't wow me, but when I switched to Serenade mode, now that made a difference. So this is the original sound frequency response, and now this is the Serenade frequency response. That is a massive, massive difference. Now, what we look for in a frequency response is, first of all, whatever the response might be, it has to be smooth across the board. Bear in mind that a lot of YouTubers and reviewers can make things feel smoother by smoothing out the lines. This is a thing that everyone, including me, does, but I do it in a standardized way. My smoothing will always be 1/12. I'm not going to go into what that is, but basically, that's just standardized, right? So across the board in all my videos, it's the same thing and it's kind of industry standard. In this case, the Serenade mode seemed a lot cleaner in every single way than the original sound mode. And also, it's just a lot flatter in the mids. It's very de-emphasized with regards to the bass, but this actually adds to the bass quality rather than quantity. But I do think a lot of people are going to think the bass is rather anemic on the Serenade mode in default. And the treble is different, but it's still a lot of treble. I think the fundamental problem with this is there is a lot of upper treble beyond 10 kilohertz. So the really high frequency stuff, there's a lot. And this is where the problem kind of begins, because in the Serenade mode, man, things feel better, more open, more relaxed. The bass is there, but it's still got quality, just not the quantity. But the treble is there. So if you have less bass and the treble is still there, it's going to sound like a very treble sharp tuning, and that's exactly what the Serenade EQ sounds like. Even though it's better, the treble kind of lets it down. It's just too much of it and it's uneven and it's not very nice. So then I go down to the custom EQ and see if that can improve matters. The problem is the custom EQ does not start off from your last selected EQ. The custom EQ defaults the sound to the original sound EQ, and then you're manipulating that EQ preset. So if you go to custom EQ, you have to remember what the original sound is and then change that accordingly. And what I tried to do was lower the bass and lower the treble and keep the mids where they are. And what I ended up doing was I did lower the bass to a degree. Like I really reduced the 60 Hz down to the minimum possible allowed in the EQ, and even then it was quite a bit of bass, but it was better. It was a lot less overbearing. The problem is, on the treble side of things, while the 8K slider does change the treble a little bit, the 16 kilohertz slider, the really high frequency stuff, doesn't do anything. I mean, maybe just a little bit, but I've brought it down to absolute zero and there is still too much treble. So with this EQ, I was able to improve from the original sound, but I wasn't able to get it to where I wanted to go. So then I came out of this menu, and to the main menu, I see a couple of options: golden sound, spatial audio, and dynamic audio. So golden sound we'll talk about in a second. Spatial audio is still a bit gimmicky. It's basically the same as what the OnePlus Buds 4 does. It adds some spatialness. So if I just record normal audio like I am now and not render it for spatial audio, it's fine. It sounds a little more spacious, but you actually lose some of the information there. Like if there is actual echoes in the room, I'm not in a room right now, but if there were echoes, if you put on spatial sound, the voice sounds like it's coming inside a room, but the echoes again get de-emphasized. It's a weird thing. It's a bit gimmicky. It's kind of fun if you want to try it out, but I wouldn't really recommend it for most normal listening. Now, dynamic audio is interesting. At first, I thought this is just changing the bass and the treble along with the volume level. Some earbuds do that. As you go lower in volume, it increases bass and treble to give your mind the impression that there's same amount of bass and treble no matter what volume you're in. This doesn't do that. This is actually the EQ that should have been inside the EQ mode menu, because what this does is take the EQ preset that you've chosen. So it could be Serenade, original sound, custom one, whatever, and then it allows you to tweak it further. So I really don't understand why it's outside of that sub menu and in the main menu, but here we are. So what I did was went back to the Serenade mode because that's the best I could get. And then I increased the bass by 1 notch, which is okay for me, maybe 2 notches for you at most, but play around with it. That gave me a little bit more bass, a little bit more warmth in the sound, but it still kept bass quality over quantity. And honestly, I really like the way this thing does bass, because for once, there's not an overpowering mid-bass emphasis, and the low, deep, rumbly bass is there. It's quite apparent, and it's really nice and smooth, so there's quality and detail in the bass as well, and honestly, quite impressive. The mids I left where it is, and then the highs I dropped by 1 notch. Now you might say, if the highs are so bad, why not drop it by more? Why not drop it all the way? Because this is just one high frequency slider, and what it does is just remove basically everything beyond 4, 5, 6 kilohertz down, which is not what I want to do. I just want to remove everything beyond 10 kilohertz. It doesn't allow you that kind of fine control, and in the custom EQ, like I said, that fine control, it just doesn't work for the high frequencies. So reducing it by 1 reduces the treble emphasis generally, and I found this to be much less fatiguing and a better sound. So what I recommend to you is you pick the Serenade EQ mode, go to dynamic audio, turn it on, increase the bass by 1 notch or 2, up to you, leave the mid where it is, and take the high frequencies and drop it by a notch. Now, what I get is a much nicer, more spacious, more open sound, a more relaxed sound where vocals are still emphasized, but they're not being muddied by overly ambitious bass. And the treble also is a little bit more curtailed and a little bit less fatiguing. However, the treble is still very fatiguing. For some reason, no matter what you do in this app, you cannot reduce the upper treble. You just can't do it. Luckily, I use an Android phone. And on an Android phone, you can install something like Wavelet and take matters into your own hands, which I did. I took the 16 kHz slider in Wavelet and dropped it down by 4 decibels, and man, oh man, did it make a difference. This was a much nicer sound. Much nicer than I was able to, well, a bit nicer than I was able to achieve on the OnePlus Buds 4. And honestly, really quite good. There are still a couple of issues though. The treble issue isn't completely gone because there is some unevenness in the treble, and what it does is your vocals in general have this sort of sharp, crackly, compressed edge to them because of the way the treble is. And for some reason, I just can't get around that. At a higher volumes, this thing sounds a little more bit crushed and compressed. At low and mid volumes, this thing sounds, with the EQ settings I've provided you, and with my recommendation, it sounds really nice, but it's just something about the timbre of the vocals just keeps grating. And in that respect, I think the OnePlus Buds 4 is still a little bit better, but for overall tuning, it takes a lot of effort, but you can get this to a good place, which brings me to basically my conclusion. But before that, let's do a quick microphone test and in fact compare the microphones of these two earbuds. Okay, this is the noisiest place I could find. There's traffic, there's people, and there's a bunch of exhausts up here you can't see from the kitchens of the restaurants nearby, so it's really noisy. But you're listening to just the microphone of my camera. Now we're going to switch to the Realme Air 7 Pro. Now we're listening to the Realme Air 7 Pro. Are you hearing my voice clearly? Is it filtering out the background noise? And is there a lot of artifacting, or is my voice coming through clearly and smoothly? I don't know. You tell me. But just for a point of comparison, let's compare it with the OnePlus Buds 4. And now you're listening to the OnePlus Buds 4. Same situation, same traffic, same everything. Is it better than the Realme Air 7 Pro? Is the voice coming through better? Is there better background noise suppression? You tell me. Okay, now that we've done the microphone test, tell me which one you thought was better in the comment down below. And also subscribe and like the video, because you have to ask that. It's a default thing, guys. Here's the deal. Between these two earbuds, despite the fact that this is a very comfortable earbud and you can get, in my opinion, better sound than the OnePlus in some respects, I have a very big problem with both of these. Fundamentally, they're comfortable, they have good battery life, they have all your features that you could possibly want, and a couple of extra on the Realme, to be fair. But the sound, they're capable of good sound, but just the out-of-the-box tuning is still not great on both of them. And there is so much effort to be done to get good sound out of them that for the average person, that's not going to happen. They're just going to be stuck with something that's overly bassy and trebly, and they'll think, hey, this is great because it sounds exciting and it sounds detailed, but actually, you're not getting really good sound. If you have the Realme, try what I told you. Serenade plus the dynamic audio setting, just try it, and then go to wavelet and drop the high frequency. Just try it. It's so much nicer than the stock sound. You'll still get all the detail, but it'll just be nice, even, effortless sound. You can get really good sound out of the Realme for the most part, but I think it's a little bit better to get just a decent sound out of the OnePlus still. And I think for most people, less effort is better. Add to that the fact that the OnePlus has noticeably better noise cancelling and transparency in some situations, and in other situations just a little bit better. So overall, just better. And I think from a value point of view, you get just more out of the OnePlus. So yeah, I think things are getting better for all these brands, but I think the bar is set still pretty low and they have a long way to go. And for the life of me, I don't understand why Realme or OnePlus or any of them just don't reach out to a serious audio-focused YouTuber. Doesn't have to be me. Pretty much anyone can help them make better sound at this point. But they're getting there. They're getting there. Between the two, though, I still have to recommend the OnePlus Buds 4 personally. But if you have this, yeah, you have a shot of getting slightly better sound than the OnePlus out of the Realme if you put in the effort. That's where we're at right now. Oh, and before I forget, little giveaway. That's right, we give away stuff, and this video I'm giving away this Zigat wired IEM to this person. How do you get giveaways? You become a paying member of the channel. It's only $1 a month, $3 a month if you want to support me more, and this is going to the $3 tier because this is an expensive IEM. Congratulations. Message me on Discord and I'll send it to you. Okay, I'll see you in the next one. Stay happy, stay peaceful, stay colorful. Namaste, and thank you for your support.